They say blood is thicker than water, but in the brutal world of wolf packs, greed is the only currency that matters. Meet Serafina Hart. To the outside world, she was the princess of the Iron Ridge Pack, but behind closed doors, she was a slave to her own brothers, starved, abused, and silenced. Tonight, her nightmare deepens. Betrayed by her own flesh and blood, Serafina is sold to their worst enemy, Alpha Dominic Sterling, a man rumored to be a heartless monster. But her brothers made a fatal calculation. They didn't know that the monster they sold her to has been dreaming of her face every night for the last 10 years. The floor of the Alpha's office in the Iron Ridge Pack house was made of cheap laminate that was peeling at the corners, much like the pack's reputation. Serafina Hart scrubbed a scuff mark near the skirting board, her knuckles raw and red from the bleach water. The smell of harsh chemicals burned her nose, but it was better than the smell of stale beer and cigar smoke that clung to her brothers. "Stop scrubbing, you useless little runt! You're making too much noise," Caleb Hart snapped, kicking the side of her bucket. Dirty water sloshed over the rim, soaking into the knees of Serafina's oversized, threadbare jeans. Serafina didn't flinch. She had learned long ago that flinching only invited a second kick. She kept her head down, her dark hair falling like a curtain to hide the bruise blooming on her cheekbone from yesterday's argument about the grocery budget. At 20 years old, she should have been exploring her wolf, finding a mate, or studying at the university. Instead, she was the Cinderella of Iron Ridge, hidden away by her two older brothers, Caleb and Wyatt, ever since their parents died in that suspicious car accident 5 years ago. "The numbers don't look good, Cal," Wyatt said, his voice thick with anxiety. He was pacing by the window, looking out at the pack grounds which were overgrown with weeds. "The creditors are coming tomorrow. If we don't have the 5 million, we lose the territory. We lose the alpha status. We'll be rogues." Caleb leaned back in his father's old leather chair, the springs groaning under his weight. He took a drag of his cigar. "We aren't losing anything. I made a call." Serafina squeezed the rag into the bucket, trying to make herself invisible. She knew that tone. Caleb's schemes always ended in pain for someone, usually her. "A call? To who?" Wyatt asked, pausing. "Nobody lends to Iron Ridge anymore. Our credit is shot." "I didn't call a bank, you idiot! I called Dominic Sterling." The room went deathly silent. Even Serafina stopped breathing for a moment. Dominic Sterling, the alpha of the Obsidian Moon Pack. They called him the Butcher of the North. He controlled the largest territory in the state, ran billion-dollar tech companies, and was rumored to have wiped out an entire pack of rogues single-handedly because they trespassed on his land. He was the boogeyman of the werewolf world. "Are you insane?" Wyatt hissed. "Sterling hates us. Our father and his father were rivals for decades." "Exactly," Caleb smiled, a cruel, jagged thing. "He wants our land, or rather he wants the mineral rights under the southern ridge. But he's a businessman. He offered a deal." "What kind of deal?" Caleb tapped the ash from his cigar onto the floor Serafina had just cleaned. "He clears our debt. He gives us a protection treaty. In exchange, he wants a transfer of assets." "What assets? We have nothing." Caleb's eyes shifted. Slowly, deliberately, his gaze landed on Serafina, who was still kneeling on the floor. Serafina felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the wet denim. She slowly looked up, her violet eyes, unusual for a wolf, widening in terror. "No," Wyatt whispered, following his brother's gaze. She's a runt, Caleb. She hasn't even shifted yet. She's 20. Most wolves shift at 16. She's defective." "Sterling doesn't care about her wolf," Caleb said dismissively. "He needs a housekeeper for that massive estate of his. Or a breeder. Or maybe he just wants a heart to humiliate, to keep as a pet to prove he owns us. The contract says he wants the female heir of the Hart bloodline. That's her." Serafina stood up, the water dripping from her clothes. "You can't," she whispered, her voice raspy from disuse. "I'm your sister." Caleb laughed, standing up and walking around the desk. He towered over her. "Sister, you're a leech, Serafina. You eat our food, you take up space, and you can't even shift to defend the border. You're a liability. Mum and Dad would never—" Smack! Caleb's backhand sent her sprawling back to the floor. She tasted copper. "Mum and Dad are dead," Caleb snarled. "And we are surviving. Sterling's beta is coming at midnight to collect the asset. You'd better go pack a bag. Actually, don't bother. I doubt the Alpha King wants our rags in his mansion. Please," Serafina begged, tears finally spilling over. "He's a monster. They say he kills wolves for sport. Please, Wyatt." She looked to her second brother, the one who used to read her bedtime stories when they were children. Wyatt looked away, his jaw working. He looked at the unpaid bills on the desk, then at his trembling sister. The greed and fear won out. "It's $5 million, Sarah," Wyatt muttered, not meeting her eyes. "It's for the good of the pack. You always said you wanted to help, right? This is how you help." "Get her out of my sight," Caleb ordered, "and lock her in her room until midnight. If she runs, break her legs." Serafina was dragged out of the office by her arm, her heels dragging on the floor she had spent all morning scrubbing. As the door slammed shut and the lock clicked, she didn't scream. She sat on the edge of her small, lumpy mattress and stared at the wall. Sold. She had been sold like a used car to pay for her brother's gambling and mismanagement. She thought of Dominic Sterling. The stories said he was 7 feet tall, with eyes like ice and a heart made of stone. They said he never smiled. They said he had no mate because the moon goddess knew no woman could survive him. She went to the window. It was barred, installed by Caleb 2 years ago, for her protection. There was no escape. For the first time in her life, a spark of pure hot rage ignited in Serafina's chest. It wasn't the heat of a shift. She had never felt the wolf inside her, leading her family to believe she was wolfless. But it was something else. It was hatred. "If I survive Dominic Sterling," she vowed to the empty room, "I will come back, and I will burn this house to the ground." Midnight arrived with a thunderstorm that shook the foundations of the rotting pack house. The rain lashed against the windows like gravel. Serafina sat on her bed, dressed in the only nice thing she owned, a white summer dress that was 2 sizes too small and completely inappropriate for the weather. Caleb had forced her into it, saying she needed to look presentable for the handover. She heard the sound of heavy tires crunching on the gravel driveway. Not the rattling engines of her brother's trucks, but the smooth, powerful hum of expensive engineering. The door to her room burst open. "Let's go!" Caleb barked. He grabbed her wrist, his grip bruising. They marched her downstairs. The front door was open, letting the storm blow into the hallway. 3 black SUVs were idling in the driveway, their headlights cutting through the rain. A man stood by the lead car, holding a large black umbrella. He wasn't Dominic Sterling. He was tall, with sandy blonde hair and a sharp, calculating face. This was Elias, the Obsidian Moon Beta. Caleb shoved Serafina forward into the rain. She stumbled, instantly soaked, her hair plastering to her face. She shivered violently, the cold biting into her skin. "The asset!" Caleb shouted over the thunder, gesturing to her as if she were a crate of contraband. Elias stepped forward, the umbrella shielding him, leaving Serafina in the downpour. He looked her up and down, his expression unreadable. He didn't look at her with lust or disgust. He looked at her with clinical precision. "This is the girl?" Elias asked, his voice calm but projecting clearly over the storm. Seraphina Hart, the only female heir, Caleb said, puffing out his chest. As agreed. Elias nodded to one of the enforcers behind him. The man handed a briefcase to Caleb. Caleb popped it open, his eyes lighting up at the stacks of cash and the transfer documents inside. Pleasure doing business? Caleb smirked. Elias didn't smile. The Alpha expects she is undamaged. She's fine. A bit of a mute, but she works hard. Caleb lied. Elias turned his gaze to Seraphina. Get in the car, Miss Hart. Seraphina looked back at the porch. Wyatt was standing in the doorway watching. Wyatt! She screamed, her voice cracking. Don't let them take me. Wyatt took a half-step back into the shadows and closed the door. The finality of it hit her like a physical blow. The enforcer gently but firmly guided her toward the back seat of the middle SUV. The interior was warm, smelling of expensive leather and cedarwood. She huddled against the door, hugging her knees, her teeth chattering uncontrollably. The car began to move, leaving the only home she had ever known. The drive took 2 hours. They wound up into the mountains, crossing the border into Obsidian territory. The roads became smoother, the forests denser and more ancient. Finally, they passed through massive iron gates adorned with the crest of a howling wolf against a crescent moon. The Sterling estate wasn't a house. It was a fortress of glass and dark stone, built into the side of a cliff overlooking a valley of pine trees. It was terrifyingly beautiful. The car stopped. The door opened. Out, Elias said. Not unkindly, but it was an order. Seraphina stepped out onto the cobblestone courtyard. The rain had stopped here, replaced by a thick, swirling mist. The massive double doors of the mansion opened, and there he was. Dominic Sterling. The stories didn't do him justice. He was massive, radiating a power so intense it made the air around him vibrate. He wore a charcoal grey suit that strained against his broad shoulders. His hair was black as a raven's wing, and his jaw was sharp enough to cut glass. But it was his scent that hit her first. Dark chocolate, burning wood, and ozone. It was intoxicating. Seraphina couldn't breathe. Her instinct was to drop to her knees and bare her neck, the submission of a wolf to an alpha king. But she was frozen in fear. She waited for him to sneer, to order her to the kennels. Dominic walked down the stone steps. His movement was predatory, fluid. The enforcers bowed their heads. Elias stepped back. Dominic stopped 2 feet away from her. He towered over her, blocking out the moon. Seraphina trembled, looking at his polished shoes. I can cook, she stammered, remembering Caleb's words to make herself useful. I can clean. I don't eat much. Dominic didn't speak. He reached out a hand. Seraphina flinched, closing her eyes, expecting a strike. Instead, she felt a warm, rough finger hook under her chin, gently tilting her head up. She was forced to look into his eyes. They weren't just ice blue. They were swirling with gold flecks, and they were wide with shock. The feared Alpha King, the Butcher of the North, looked as if he had seen a ghost. His chest heaved, a low growl rumbling in his throat, not of aggression, but of something possessive. "It's you," he whispered, his voice deep and rough, like gravel grinding together. Seraphina blinked, confused. "Alpha?" Dominic stepped closer, inhaling deeply near her neck. His hand moved from her chin to cup her cheek. His thumb brushed away a raindrop. His touch was electric, sending a jolt of heat through her frozen body that made her knees buckle. He caught her effortlessly, pulling her against his hard chest. "Elias!" Dominic roared, his eyes never leaving Seraphina's face. "Yes, Alpha. Get the pack, Doctor. Now!" Dominic swept Seraphina up into his arms, carrying her bridal style, as if she weighed nothing. "Alpha, where are you taking her?" "The servants' quarters are in the east wing," Elias asked, confused. Dominic turned, his eyes glowing a fierce, golden amber. "She is not going to the servants' quarters." He looked down at Serafina, who was staring at him in terrified wonder. "She goes to my room." Serafina's heart hammered against her ribs. His room? Was he going to claim her now? Was she just a toy to him? But as he carried her through the grand hallway, ignoring the gasps of the staff, she heard him whisper something under his breath, so low only she could hear. 10 years, he murmured into her hair. "I finally found you." The master suite of the Sterling estate was larger than the entire ground floor of Serafina's childhood home. One wall was entirely made of glass, revealing the storm-lashed valley below, illuminated by occasional flashes of lightning. A fireplace, large enough to stand in, roared with a crackling fire, casting dancing shadows across the room. Dominic kicked the door shut behind him, shutting out the prying eyes of the household staff. He carried Serafina to the massive 4-poster bed, the sheets made of black silk. He set her down as if she were made of spun glass. Serafina scrambled backward the moment her feet touched the mattress, pressing her back against the headboard. She pulled her knees to her chest, her teeth chattering violently. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only the bone-deep cold of the rain and the terrifying reality of her situation. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the fire. I'll sleep on the floor." "You don't have to. Please don't hurt me." Dominic froze. He was in the middle of unbuttoning his soaked suit jacket. His hands paused on his crisp white shirt. The amber glow in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a look of profound pain that Serafina didn't understand. "Hurt you?" Dominic repeated, his voice low. He tossed his jacket onto a nearby chair and took a step closer. "Is that what you think I am? A monster? Everyone says—" Serafina trailed off, terrified she had offended him. "They say you're the butcher." Dominic let out a short, humorless laugh. "I am a butcher to my enemies, Serafina, to those who threaten what is mine." He knelt by the side of the bed, bringing his face level with hers. "But you, I would sooner rip out my own heart than scratch your skin." He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movements. When she didn't flinch away, he gently took her hand. His hand was massive, swallowing hers, his skin radiating a furnace-like heat that seeped into her frozen bones. He turned her hand over, inspecting the red, raw knuckles from the bleach and scrubbing. A low growl vibrated in his chest, a sound so deep she felt it in her own stomach. "Who did this?" "Cleaning," she murmured. I had to clean the floors before I left." Dominic's jaw tightened until a muscle feathered in his cheek. He didn't say a word, but the air in the room grew heavy with his suppressed rage. He stood up abruptly, startling her. "Dr. Henry is on his way," Dominic said, his voice clipped. "Stay here, do not move." He went into the adjoining bathroom and returned with a thick, fluffy towel. He sat on the edge of the bed and, without asking, draped it over her head, briskly but gently rubbing her hair dry. The intimacy of the act was shocking. Her brothers hadn't touched her with anything but violence in 5 years. This man, this stranger who had bought her like cattle, was drying her hair. There was a knock at the door. "Enter," Dominic commanded. A short, balding man with kind eyes and a medical bag bustled in. This was Dr. Henry, the pack physician. He stopped short when he saw the Alpha sitting on the bed with the girl, toweling her hair. "Alpha," Dr. Henry bowed. "Is this the patient?" "She's freezing, she's malnourished, and she has injuries." Dominic listed the symptoms clinically, but his eyes never left Serafina's face. "Check her, thoroughly." Dr. Henry approached slowly. "Hello, miss. I'm just going to listen to your heart and check your temperature. Is that okay?" Serafina nodded mutely. For the next 20 minutes, she endured the examination. When Dr. Henry lifted the hem of her wet dress to check her legs, he sucked in a breath. Dominic, who was pacing by the fire, was at the bedside in a second. "What is it?" Dominic demanded. Dr. Henry pointed to her shins. They were a map of old scars and fresh yellow bruising from Caleb's steel-toed boots. "Old fractures that didn't heal right," the doctor murmured. "Malnutrition has made her bones brittle. Alpha, she shows signs of long-term physical abuse, significant caloric deficiency. She weighs barely 100 pounds. It's a miracle she's standing, let alone walking." Dominic looked at the bruises. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Get out," he whispered. "Alpha, leave us. Send up food, high protein, warm soup, and pain relief." Dr. Henry nodded frantically and hurried out. Dominic turned back to Serafina. She was trembling again, ashamed of her broken body, ashamed that the powerful Alpha King was seeing her ugliness. "I'm sorry I'm damaged," she whispered, looking down at her hands. "My brother said you wanted a breeder, but I don't think I can—" "Stop," Dominic commanded. It wasn't a shout, but the power in it snapped her mouth shut. He sat beside her again. He reached out and traced the line of her jaw, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were swimming with emotions, rage, sorrow, and something that looked like worship. "You are not a breeder. You are not a servant. And you are certainly not damaged goods," Dominic said fiercely. "You are the woman I have seen every night in my dreams for 10 years. I drew your face before I ever knew your name. I knew the color of your eyes before I knew you existed." Serafina stared at him. "Dreams? That's impossible. We've never met." "The moon goddess works in mysterious ways," Dominic said. "I thought I was going mad. I searched for you. I hired investigators. But your brothers, they hid you well. No school records, no social media. You were a ghost." He leaned in closer, his forehead resting against hers. "When Caleb Hart called me to sell his assets, I didn't care about the land. I was going to hang up. But then I had a feeling, a pull. I demanded he sell me the heir. I didn't know it was you, but the moment you stepped out of that car, my wolf knew." "Knew what?" Serafina breathed. "That you are mine," Dominic vowed, "and I will burn the world down before I let anyone hurt you again." The next morning, Serafina woke up alone. For a moment, she panicked, thinking she was back in her damp, mouldy room at Iron Ridge. But the sensation of silk against her skin and the smell of cedar wood and rain told her otherwise. She sat up. She was wearing one of Dominic's t-shirts, which hung on her like a dress. Her own clothes were gone. On the bedside table, there was a tray with a silver cloche. She lifted it to reveal a hearty breakfast: eggs, bacon, toast, and fruit, along with a glass of orange juice and a single red rose. There was a note written in heavy, jagged handwriting. "Eat everything. I have business with the council. Explore the house, but do not leave the grounds. D." Serafina ate voraciously. She hadn't had a full meal in years. Afterward, she felt a strange burst of energy. She cautiously opened the bedroom door. The hallway was quiet. The walls were lined with expensive art. She walked barefoot across the plush carpet, marveling at the silence. In her old house, there was always shouting, breaking glass, or the loud TV. Here, there was only peace. She made her way down the grand staircase. She intended to find the kitchen to thank whoever made the food, a habit ingrained in her from years of servitude. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, she heard voices coming from the living room. "It's an insult, Elias," a woman's voice, sharp, high-pitched and angry. "He brings a stray into the pack house, a heart. Their blood is tainted. They are traitors and thieves, and she's a runt. She has no wolf." "Careful, Vanessa," Elias's voice warned. "The Alpha is attached. Attached. He's bewitched. I have been training to be his Luna for 5 years. My father is the Alpha of the River Delta Pack. Our alliance is crucial. And he tosses me aside for a broken little thing he bought for cash?" Serafina froze. She tried to back up the stairs, but she stepped on a creaky floorboard. The voices stopped. A woman stepped into the hallway. Vanessa was stunning. Tall, with cascading blonde hair, a figure that filled out her designer dress perfectly, and eyes that were cold and predatory. She looked like a queen. Serafina, in an oversized t-shirt with messy hair, felt like a beggar. Vanessa's eyes narrowed as she looked Serafina up and down. "So this is the pet?" Serafina gripped the banister. I was just looking for the kitchen." Vanessa stalked forward, her heels clicking on the marble. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, looking up at Serafina with a sneer. "The kitchen is for staff. Are you staff, or are you a whore? Because Dominic doesn't keep whores for long." "Leave her alone, Vanessa," Elias said, stepping into view. He looked tired. "I'm just asking a question," Vanessa said innocently, though her scent spiked with aggression. "Tell me, little mute, has he realized yet that you're broken? You're 20 and you haven't shifted. You're a defect, a genetic dead end. Dominic needs a strong wolf to bear his heirs, not a weakling who will die in childbirth." Serafina felt tears prick her eyes. It was exactly what Caleb had always said. "I didn't ask to be here," Serafina whispered. "Then leave," Vanessa hissed. "Run away. Do us all a favor. Because if you stay, the pack will eat you alive. We don't tolerate weakness here." Suddenly, the front door slammed open with the force of a thunderclap. Dominic stood there. He had clearly just come from a run. He was shirtless, wearing only sweatpants, his skin glistening with sweat and dirt, but his expression was murderous. "Vanessa!" Dominic's voice was a low growl that shook the window panes. Vanessa spun around, her face losing all its color. "Alpha, I was just welcoming our guest." Dominic walked forward. He didn't rush, but his stride ate up the distance. He walked right past Vanessa as if she didn't exist and climbed the stairs to Serafina. He stopped one step below her, looking at her face. He reached out and wiped a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Did she touch you?" Dominic asked softly. Serafina shook her head. Dominic turned slowly to face Vanessa. His eyes were glowing a bright, molten gold. The power radiating off him forced Elias to bow his head. Vanessa fell to her knees, her wolf forcing her into submission. "You are banished from the pack house," Dominic stated calmly. "Dominic, please," Vanessa cried. "My father." "Your father will be told that his daughter insulted the Alpha's mate," Dominic roared, his voice changing, layering with the growl of his wolf. "You questioned my judgment. You threatened what is mine. Get out before I rip your throat out." Vanessa scrambled up and ran out the door, sobbing. Dominic turned back to Serafina. He looked terrified that she was upset. "I am sorry. I should have been here." "She said I'm broken," Serafina whispered. "She said I have no wolf. She's right, Dominic. I can't be what you want. I can't be a Luna. I'm just nothing." Dominic sighed, a deep, rattling sound. He sat on the step and pulled her down to sit on his lap, wrapping his massive arms around her. "You aren't broken, Serafina," he said into her ear. "You are dormant. There is a reason you haven't shifted. Your brothers, They didn't just starve your body. They starved your wolf. A wolf needs love, safety, and pack bonds to emerge. You had none of that. He pulled back to look at her. But you're safe now. And your wolf? She isn't weak. I can feel her. She's ancient. She's powerful. She's just waiting for the right time to wake up. 3 days passed. Life at the Sterling estate was a dream Serafina was afraid to wake up from. Dominic was gone during the days, running his business empire and managing the pack borders, but he returned every evening to have dinner with her. He didn't touch her inappropriately. He simply courted her. He brought her books, he showed her the gardens, and he told her stories of his ancestors. But the peace couldn't last. On the 4th afternoon, Serafina was in the library, reading a book about wolf history. She was trying to understand what Dominic meant about her being dormant. Her phone, a new one Dominic had given her, buzzed, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello? You ungrateful little bitch." "Caleb." Serafina dropped the phone. She scrambled to pick it up, her hands shaking. "Caleb, how did you get this number?" "I have friends, Sarah. Friends who tell me things," Caleb sneered. "So you're living the high life with the king, huh? Sleeping in silk while your family starves?" "You sold me," Serafina cried, finding a backbone she didn't know she had. "You got $5 million. You aren't starving." "The money is gone," Caleb spat. "Gambling debts were higher than I thought. And the creditors, they want more. But that's not the point. We found something, Sarah, in Mum's old safety deposit box, a will from Grandma Rose." Serafina's breath hitched. Grandma Rose was a legend in their family, a powerful healer who died before Serafina was born. "It says," Caleb continued, his voice dripping with greed, "that the Hart family land, specifically the mineral rights, doesn't belong to the Alpha. It belongs to the female line. It belongs to you, Serafina, which means I sold something that wasn't mine to sell." "So?" Serafina asked, confused. "So the contract with Sterling is void," Caleb said triumphantly. "You still own the land, and Sterling knows it. He scammed us. He bought you to keep you quiet so he could steal the rights to the silver mines under our ridge." Serafina felt the room spin. "He bought you to keep you quiet. Was that it? Was the dream story just a lie to seduce her into signing over the rights? Was his kindness just a manipulation?" "Come home, Sarah," Caleb said, his voice turning fake sweet. "We can sue him. We can get the land back. You'll be rich. You'll be the alpha female of Iron Ridge. Just come to the old bridge at the border tonight. I'll be waiting." The line went dead. Serafina stood there, her heart pounding. Doubt, insidious and cold, crept into her mind. Dominic was a businessman. He was ruthless. Everyone said so. Why would a king want a broken girl? The mineral rights, they were worth billions. It made sense. It made too much sense. She heard the front door open. Dominic was home early. "Sarah!" His voice boomed through the house, warm and welcoming. She walked out to the hallway. He was standing there with a bouquet of wildflowers he must have picked on his way in. He looked happy. "I have a surprise," he said, smiling. "Tonight is the full moon. I want to take you to the Moon Lake. Tradition says that if a dormant wolf bathes there under the full moon with their mate, they will shift." He believed they were mates, or he was pretending to. "Dominic," Serafina said, her voice trembling, "do you know about the mineral rights under the Iron Ridge?" Dominic's smile faltered. He lowered the flowers slowly. His face became the mask of the Alpha King, unreadable and cold. "Where did you hear about that?" he asked quietly. "Is it true?" she demanded, stepping back. "Do I own the land? Is that why you bought me? Is the dream just a lie to get the silver?" Dominic closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Serafina, it is complicated." "It's not complicated. Yes or no?" "Yes, the land is yours," Dominic admitted. "And yes, I knew about the will before your brothers did." Serafina gasped, a sob breaking from her chest. "You lied." "I didn't lie about wanting you." Dominic stepped forward, desperate. "I bought the rights and you to save you from them. If your brothers knew you owned that land, they would have killed you to inherit it. I was trying to protect you until you were strong enough to claim it yourself." "I don't believe you," Serafina whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than any of Caleb's beatings. "You're just like them. Everyone just wants to use me." She turned and ran. "Serafina, wait!" Dominic roared. But she didn't wait. She ran out the back door, into the gardens and toward the forest. She didn't know where she was going, but the pain in her chest was so great she felt like she was dying. She ran until her lungs burned. She ran until the sun began to set, and the full moon began to rise. She found herself at the edge of the territory, near the old bridge. The place Caleb had mentioned. A truck was idling there. Caleb and Wyatt were leaning against it. "There she is," Caleb grinned, tossing a cigarette aside. "I knew you were smart, Sarah. Get in the truck. We're going to a lawyer." Serafina stopped 10 yards away. She looked at her brothers. They looked sloppy, greedy, and cruel. Then she thought of Dominic. He had been kind. He had been gentle. Even if he wanted the land, he had fed her. He had defended her against Vanessa. "No," Serafina said, her voice steady. Caleb's smile dropped. "What did you say?" "I said no. I'm not going with you. I'm not signing anything. The land is mine? Fine. Then I'm keeping it, and I'm staying with Dominic." "You stupid little cow," Wyatt snarled, pulling a tranquilizer gun from the truck bed. "We didn't come here to ask." Wyatt aimed the gun. Bang! A dart hit Serafina in the shoulder. She gasped, pulling it out, but the world was already tilting. Her knees hit the dirt. "Grab her," Caleb ordered. "We'll take her to the rogue encampment. If we can't have the land, we'll sell her to the highest bidder. I hear the Southern Alpha likes exotic pets." As darkness swarmed her vision, Serafina felt a strange heat building in her belly. It wasn't the drug. It was something else. The full moon was rising above the trees, bathing her in silver light. And for the first time in 20 years, the wolf inside her opened its eyes. "Mine," the wolf voice growled in her head. "They will not take us." But her human body was too weak. She slumped forward into the dirt. The last thing she heard was a sound that made the earth shake. A roar so loud, so filled with primal fury, that birds fell from the trees. A massive black wolf, the size of a horse, with eyes of burning gold, burst from the tree line, tearing through the underbrush like a demon of death. Dominic had arrived. The world was a blur of shadows and pain, but the sound of Dominic's roar shattered the hazy grip of the tranquilizer. Serafina lay in the dirt, her limbs heavy as lead, watching through half-lidded eyes as the massive black beast, Dominic's wolf, collided with her brother's truck. Metal screeched and tore like paper. With a swipe of claws the size of steak knives, Dominic ripped the driver's side door off its hinges. Caleb scrambled out the other side, screaming, "Shoot him! Wyatt, shoot him!" Wyatt, shaking so hard he could barely hold the tranquilizer rifle, fired another dart. It struck the black wolf in the flank. Dominic didn't even flinch. His rage was a shield that pain could not penetrate. He snarled, a sound of pure, unadulterated death, and lunged over the hood of the truck, snapping his jaws inches from Wyatt's face. Wyatt dropped the gun and fell backward, scrambling in the mud like a frightened crab. "Stay back!" Caleb yelled, pulling a silver knife from his boot, an illegal weapon, banned by the council. "I'll kill her! I swear I'll kill her!" Dominic froze. The black wolf's intelligent golden eyes shifted from the trembling Wyatt to Caleb, who was now inching toward Seraphina's prone body, the silver blade glinting in the moonlight. The drug in Seraphina's system was pulling her down into the dark, but a new sensation was rising to meet it. It started in the marrow of her bones, a burning, white, hot heat. It wasn't just the full moon, it was the sight of her mate in danger. It was the realization that for the first time in her life, someone was fighting for her. "Get up," a voice whispered in her mind. It wasn't her voice. It was ancient, regal, and demanding. "They have caged us for too long. Break the chains." "Don't come any closer," Caleb screamed at the wolf, holding the knife over Seraphina. "Back off, Sterling, or I end the heart bloodline right here." Dominic whined, a low, frustrated sound. He took a step back, lowering his massive head in submission to save her. The Alpha King, bowing to a coward. That image, the most powerful man in the world bowing to her abuser, snapped the last thread of Seraphina's restraint. A scream tore from her throat, but it morphed halfway through into a howl that harmonized with the wind. The sound was so piercing, so full of raw power, that the windows of the truck shattered inward. "What the hell?" Caleb gasped, looking down. Seraphina's body arched off the ground. The sound of bones cracking echoed through the clearing, sickening and loud. Usually, the first shift is slow and agonizing, taking hours. But Seraphina didn't have hours. Her wolf, suppressed for 20 years, exploded to the surface with the force of a tidal wave. Her skin split, replaced instantly by fur. Her human form dissolved, reshaped by magic and rage. Within seconds, the small, frail girl was gone. In her place stood a creature of legend. She was not a normal wolf. She was massive, nearly as tall as Dominic. Her fur was not grey or brown, but a blinding, pristine white that seemed to glow in the darkness. And her eyes, they were not the yellow of a beta or the red of an alpha. They were a glowing, electric violet. Caleb dropped the knife, his mouth hanging open. "A moon wolf," he whispered, the blood draining from his face. "It's impossible. They went extinct a century ago." The white wolf, Seraphina, snarled. It wasn't a growl, it was a judgment. She didn't lunge, she simply moved, a blur of white light. She slammed into Caleb, pinning him to the earth with a paw the size of a dinner plate. He screamed as her claws dug into his chest, just enough to draw blood, just enough to terrify, but not to kill. Wyatt tried to run. Dominic was on him in a heartbeat, knocking him unconscious with a single precise blow to the head. Seraphina looked down at Caleb, her brother, her tormentor, the man who had sold her. He looked so small now, so pathetic. He reeked of urine and fear. "Kill him," her wolf urged. "Rip out his throat." Seraphina tightened her grip. Caleb wheezed, his eyes bulging. "Sarah, please," he choked out. "Family." Family. The word made her pause. He dared to use that word. Dominic trotted over. He didn't interfere. He stood beside her, his black shoulder brushing against her white flank, offering silent support. He would let her kill him if she wanted. He would bury the body. Seraphina looked into Dominic's golden eyes. In them, she saw pride. She saw love. She saw that she didn't need to kill Caleb to prove she was strong. Killing him was easy. Letting him live to see her rise? That was true power. She stepped off Caleb, leaned down, and roared directly into his face, a sound that would haunt his nightmares for the rest of his miserable life. Then she turned her back on him. She nuzzled Dominic's neck, inhaling his scent of cedar and rain, finally unmasked by the shift. The bond snapped into place, a golden tether connecting their souls. She wasn't broken, she wasn't a runt, she was a queen, and she was ready to go home. 2 days later, the grand hall of the Obsidian Moon Pack was packed to capacity. Wolves from neighboring territories, council elders, and important business partners filled the gallery. Whispers buzzed like angry hornets. Is it true? A white wolf? The hearts are finished. At the front of the room, on a raised dais, sat Dominic Sterling in his alpha chair. He looked every inch the king, cold, imposing, terrifying. But there was a second chair beside him, a new chair, carved from white oak and lined with velvet. Caleb and Wyatt Hart knelt in the center of the room, bound in silver chains that prevented them from shifting. They looked haggard, bruised, and terrified. "Order!" Dominic's voice boomed without a microphone, silencing the room instantly. "We are here to judge the crimes of Caleb and Wyatt Hart. Crimes of treason, embezzlement, and the attempted sale of a free-born wolf." "It was a misunderstanding," Caleb shouted, sweating profusely. "It was a business deal, a dowry." "Silence," Dominic said calmly. "You are not here to speak to me. You are here to answer to the plaintiff." Dominic stood up and extended his hand toward the side entrance. The heavy doors opened. Serafina walked in. The room gasped. She was breathtaking. She wore a gown of deep midnight blue that hugged her curves, looking nothing like the malnourished girl in the oversized dress from a week ago. Her hair was glossy and dark, cascading down her back, but it was her aura that commanded attention. She radiated power. Her violet eyes scanned the room, and every wolf, even the visiting alphas, felt the urge to bare their necks. She walked up the dais and didn't sit. She stood next to Dominic. He took her hand and kissed the knuckles in front of everyone, a public declaration that she was his equal. Serafina Hart, Elder Thomas, the head of the council, spoke up from the front row. "You bring charges against your kin." "I do," Serafina said. Her voice was clear, steady, and melodious. "For 5 years they held me prisoner in my own home. They denied me food. They denied me pack bonds, forcing my wolf into dormancy. And when they ran our parents' legacy into the ground, they sold me like cattle to cover their gambling debts." "Lies!" Wyatt cried. "She's crazy. We took care of her." Serafina reached into a folder that Elias handed to her. "I have the ledgers," she said, holding up the documents. "Caleb, you thought I was just cleaning your office. I was reading. I have a photographic memory. I know about the offshore accounts in the Caymans. I know about the skimming from the border patrols. I know you forged the signature on the loan from the Southern Pack." She tossed the papers down to the council. "And I know about Grandmother Rose's will." A hush fell over the room. "The will explicitly states," Serafina continued, her voice hardening, "that the Iron Ridge Pack leadership passes to the strongest heir. If the male heirs are deemed unfit or corrupt, the title and the land revert to the female line." She looked down at her brothers. "You sold me to Alpha Sterling because you thought he would break me. You thought I would disappear. But you forgot one thing." She stepped closer to the edge of the dais. "You can break a bone," she whispered, her voice amplified by the acoustics of the hall. "But you cannot break blood. I am the granddaughter of Rose Hart. I am the true Alpha of Iron Ridge." "I challenge that!" Caleb screamed, struggling against his chains. "You can't be Alpha. You're a girl. You have to fight for it." "A challenge has been issued," Dominic said, his face darkening. He moved to step forward to defend her, but Serafina put a hand on his chest. "No, Dominic," she said softly. "This is my fight." She walked down the stairs of the dais. The crowd parted. She stopped 3 feet from her brothers. "Unchain him," Serafina ordered the guards. "Serafina, no!" Wyatt yelled. "He'll kill you." "Unchain him," she repeated. The guard unlocked Caleb's silver cuffs. Caleb rubbed his wrists, a cruel smile spreading across his face. He stood up, towering over her. He shifted instantly, his wolf a large, mangy brown beast, foaming at the mouth with desperation. He lunged. Serafina didn't shift. She didn't need to. As the brown wolf flew through the air, Serafina simply raised her hand. A blast of pure, kinetic energy, the unique gift of the moon wolf, erupted from her palm. It hit Caleb mid-air. He was thrown backward 30 feet, smashing into a stone pillar with a bone-jarring crunch. He slid to the floor, whimpering, too broken to stand. The room was dead silent. A moon wolf didn't just have physical strength. They had the gift of the spirit. Serafina walked over to Caleb, who had shifted back to human form, coughing up blood. "I could kill you," she said, looking down at him. "The law says I can execute traitors." Caleb looked up, terror in his eyes. "Please." "But I won't," she said, turning to address the room. "Death is too easy. I strip you of your rank. I strip you of the name Hart. You are rogues. You are exiled from Iron Ridge and Obsidian territory. If you are found on our lands by sunset, you will be hunted." She turned to Wyatt. "And you watched. You did nothing. You are stripped of your rank. You will work in the mines you tried to sell. You will repay every cent of debt you created. Maybe in 10 years you will earn your freedom." "So mote it be!" the council elder shouted, slamming his staff on the floor. "So mote it be!" the crowd roared. Serafina turned back to the dais. Dominic was watching her, and the look on his face made her knees weak. It wasn't just pride anymore. It was total, consuming adoration. She walked back up to him. He pulled her into his arms, oblivious to the hundreds of people watching. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her lips. "My queen." "I had a good teacher," she smiled. Then her expression turned serious. "Dominic, about the mineral rights." "Keep them," he said immediately. "Combine the packs, or don't. I don't care about the silver, Serafina. I never did. I just wanted you." "I know," she whispered. She reached up and kissed him, a searing, passionate kiss that sealed their bond and their future. "But I think the Obsidian Moon and Iron Ridge would be stronger together." Dominic grinned, a rare, breathtaking expression that lit up his dark face. "Is that a proposal, Miss Hart?" "It's a business deal, Alpha Sterling," she teased. "But I have high demands." "Name them." "I want the master bedroom," she listed. "I want to redecorate the office. And I want you. Forever." Dominic laughed, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around as the crowd erupted into cheers. "Deal," he vowed. "Sold. To the Alpha King." 10 years later, the balcony of the Sterling estate was no longer a place of solitude. It was filled with the sound of laughter. A 5-year-old boy with messy black hair and violet eyes was chasing a golden retriever puppy around the patio furniture. Serafina sat on the swing chair, a mug of tea in her hand, watching her son. She was no longer the frightened girl who scrubbed floors. She was Serafina Sterling, the Alpha Queen of the North, leader of the largest werewolf alliance in history. Under her rule, the packs had flourished. She had built schools, reformed the debt laws, and ensured that no orphan was ever left behind or sold. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind. She leaned back into Dominic's chest. He had grayed slightly at the temples, which only made him look more distinguished. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I was thinking about the rain," she said softly. "That night you bought me." Dominic tightened his hold. The best investment I ever made. You overpaid, she joked. 5 million for a scrub woman? I would have paid 5 billion. Dominic kissed her neck. I would have given my kingdom. You saved me, Serafina. I was a monster before you. You made me a man. And you? She turned to face him, tracing the scar on his jaw. You gave me a voice. They looked out over the valley. The Iron Ridge Mountains in the distance were no longer a place of trauma, but a thriving territory managed by a council she had appointed. Caleb had never been seen again. Rumor had it he died in a bar fight in the south. Wyatt was still working in the mines, humble now, slowly earning his way back into society, sending letters of apology that Serafina read but didn't yet answer. Life wasn't perfect. There were still rogue attacks, political disputes, and the chaos of raising a pup who could shift into a wolf puppy when he didn't want to eat his vegetables. But it was her life. She owned it. "Mum! Dad!" their son yelled, pointing at the sky. "Look, the moon!" A massive, pale, full moon was rising over the ridge. Serafina stood up, taking Dominic's hand. "Ready for a run, Alpha?" Dominic's eyes flashed gold. Always my queen. They leaped over the railing together, shifting in midair, a massive black wolf and a glowing white wolf, landing on the grass below and running side by side into the endless, silver-lit forest. They were free. They were powerful. And they were home. And that, my friends, is the story of Serafina and Dominic. From a girl sold by her own brothers to the queen of the wolves, Serafina proved that true power doesn't come from your status, but from the spirit within you. Her brothers thought she was worthless, but they learned the hard way that you never, ever corner a moon wolf. I hope you enjoyed this roller coaster of betrayal, romance, and sweet, sweet karmic justice. If you loved Serafina's transformation and the moment she blasted Caleb into that pillar, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Which part was your favorite? Was it the reveal of the white wolf or Dominic's unconditional love? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more stories about hidden identities, billionaire alphas, and underdogs taking over the world, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching. Alap kau truk. Viet limo bye.